listen to your real estate agent as long as your real estate agent knows what they're talking about.
Real Estate Radio Boston with financial expert Rick Shear of MSA Mortgage.
The premise of starting the show was to be Mythbusters and sort of take out some of the fallacies out of the process.
And legal professional Ali Alavi of Alavi Braza PC.
It's a transaction for us, but it's someone's home for them. It's someone that has saved up all of their money, who has been renting for so long. It's the American dream. It's all of that.
The show that brings you the most up-to-date news in the housing market, week after week.
Is you can essentially tighten the timelines so that in the eyes of a seller, it's going to look as though it's cash. What I miss in Heights, I make up in person. Why aren't you talking to me today?
Yeah, you just get me fired up.
I do. I want to get you fired up.
Good thing my wife doesn't listen to the show or she'll have a conversation with
Don't be jealous. Don't be a hater. There's no need to be a hater.
Here are your hosts, Rick Shear and Ali Alavi.
Tell us a little bit about the firm as far as locations. And, of course, you guys represent 800 associations throughout the state, both in Mass and Rhode Island, correct?
That's correct. We have offices in Dedham, Mass. and Lincoln, Rhode Island.
Mm-hmm.
And we, as you just said, represent over 800 associations. We focus primarily on representing the governing boards of the associations.
Right.
And that sort of leads into today's topic, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, but to recap, I mean, you guys obviously advise boards, trustees of associations, but you also are involved in terms of doing condo conversions, perhaps consulting with homeowners that may think about doing condo converting of their homes. You'll represent them as well, right?
We do represent all facets of the condominium industry.
Right.
Yes, we do conversions. We will represent developers. Our major focus is representing boards.
Time commitment that these individuals have, but also there's a certain element of liability there as well. Let's talk about that.
Well, the liability lies in the fact that, unfortunately, by virtue of serving on these boards, regardless of the composition, it's a governing board, they are subject to litigation. They are named as defendants, let's say in a routine slip and fall case, or many times by a disgruntled unit owner, even if it's not particularly a substantiated claim. There are numerous times when these boards are sued for what we, as association attorneys, and we do represent governing boards when they're sued. We have insurance companies that will put us on as what's called panel counsel. If we represent the association, we know the history, we know the documents. It makes sense for us to represent as insurance counsel.
No, I don't want this to be somehow discouraging to individuals to want to become trustees, because I think there are certain safety valves that are built into these documents.
Right.
So, Henry,
exactly.
Am I right in saying that there are indemnification and hold harmless type of clauses in documents, right?
Exactly, yes. There are, in most condominium documents, there are provisions whereby the entire association indemnifies and holds the trustees harmless from liability and from costs, not to mention the fact that most associations, though not all, have directors and officers liability insurance, which also covers the trustees, as well as general liability policies. There is only one caveat. As a matter of fact, they're protected so long as they are not guilty of willful or criminal wrongdoing.
Unit owners really need to be mindful of the sacrifice that they're making, the amount of time that they're actually setting aside for the management and better of them.
That's why the unit owner can go into his or her unit, close the door, and relax, because somebody else is taking care of mowing the lawn, not physically, but making the arrangements for it, shoveling the snow, arranging for the insurance, all the many, many jobs that trustees do.
Or at least managing the budget so there's enough money to be able to have those things happen. Tell us a little bit about Partridge Snow and Hahn. Obviously, multiple office locations, and your forte is really adversity.
I am a very adverse person. It's a full-service firm. We've got offices in Providence, New Bedford, Westboro, and Boston. I'm in the Boston office, and we do everything. What I do is primarily commercial litigation and an awful lot of real estate litigation.
Right.
But we really want to focus today on this concept of adverse possession. And Rick was talking about it as though he knows what adverse possession is.
Of course
and
I do.
I know for a fact he doesn't.
Yes, I do.
So let's talk about
Marty just told me right before the break.
What is adverse possession?
I actually wonder if people actually know, other than lawyers, what adverse possession is.
Exactly.
Because it's a topic that we cover in the first year of law school. and it's
and then we forget about it.
And then we forget about it. And it just so happens that in the last few months, I've got 3 adverse possession cases, so that's why I wanted to talk about it.
Sure.
Adverse possession is where you don't own property, but you act like you own it. So you, in a what they call an open and notorious way, assume possession of a piece of property and you treat it like it's yours. And if you do that for a period of 20 years continuously, and you can prove that, you own the property.
Why is this even here? Why is it 20 years? Why is this? If it's my land, shouldn't it just be my land no matter how many years? Do you know why this whole law went into effect?
That's a really good question. Like all of our laws, I'm sure it started out in Old England, and probably when I was first-year law student, I could have told you the exact history, and I just don't know. I think the concept is that, when you own property, that comes with both benefits and obligations, and the obligation is to treat it like it's yours.
Right.
And if you allow someone else to come in and take care of your property and assume control over it, perhaps even collect rent, do everything that maybe even pay taxes.
Right.
Then after a period of time, if you haven't said something about it, you just have to live with the fact that they own it.
Speaking of taxes, though, so I mean, in circumstances whereby I'm paying taxes on this particular parcel of property that's mine, and for 20 years my neighbor's been taking care of it, maybe with or without my knowledge, the fact that I'm paying taxes doesn't impede the ability of bringing an adverse possession claim?
It can, and these cases are all about the facts. So that is definitely an important fact that would come out as to whether or not you actually assume control over the property. But if you think about a 25-foot strip of land down somebody's boundary line, how do you know if you're paying taxes or they're paying taxes?
Right.
It's just an incremental part of your overall tax bill.
What's the most common situation that you run into with this?
You'd be surprised. In preparing for the show, I looked at the case law on this, and there are, as many fact patterns as you can possibly imagine. So I'll just tell you the 3 that came up for me. Okay, one of them is in South Boston. The houses are right next to each other. And my client owned property, and next door was vacant land. And they were getting ready to develop that land all of a sudden. And 30 years before, he had put a strip of pavement down the side of his property so that he can get to his backyard and the basement to take his garbage out. And he put a fence up. And that was, for 30 years. And when they went to sell it to a developer, I had to reach out and touch the developer and say, hey, I'm sorry, but this 5-foot strip that is yours as of, title, it's not yours anymore.
Tell us a little bit about your company. What do you specialize in? Where are you located? How long have you been doing this?
So we're located in Easton. So for folks who don't know, South Shore, really close to Brockton, between Brockton and Mansfield. Most of what we do is focusing on working with seniors and boomers. So there's a big pipeline of folks coming in that really now the real estate, what do I do with it? I have this big house. Do I downsize? Can I fix it? What do I do to allow this home to be able to stay my permanent home for a long time, or does it make sense financially to do that?
But to put it in perspective, I mean, you guys don't just service the seniors and boomers.
No,
we
don't.
You're a full-service real estate firm that deals with all kinds of essentially clients. I mean, first-time home buyers.
First-time home buyers. I'm a veteran, so working with veterans, we do a lot of that stuff. But a lot of what we've been doing, the percentage of our business has been increasing. That's just been working with boomers, trying to figure out what do I do.
Jennifer, let's talk a little bit about your business and how you fit into this whole puzzle of the aging population that want to stay in their homes.
Sure. So Han Home Healthcare, we are we're private pay, but we are a home care agency that has medical and non-medical services. So pretty much anything anybody can do in a hospital, we can actually do right in their own home. So when I teamed up with Ryan, because there's so many communities out there being built, like you see them popping up everywhere.
Sure.
And really, most of them, they just want to stay at home. So, and we always get the phone calls, though, from these families when it's in a crisis mode. And we always tell them, do your research first. Find out what your parents' wishes are or what your loved one's wishes are, instead of, waiting until they're in a rehab and now they have to go home in 2 days and you don't know what's going on.
At what age is it advisable to start planning?
I would start planning probably in their 60s, to be honest, around retirement age. And, because many of the seniors, they, once they have a fall, within 6 months, they're going to have another fall. And a lot of, we found a lot of seniors, they don't have anybody at home. They fall, and then they're being left there for days.
Because if you don't plan it now, what's going to happen is you start having choice taken away.
It's
And
not
that-
a very
and that's when-
comfortable topic
It's
to
not.
talk
It's
about
not.
with your parents.
It's
No,
not. And I'll tell you, my father-in-law, he had Alzheimer's. He's now passed. But we just assumed, because we had to take his keys away, so then it left it on me to, because I was home at that time working, and I had to take him on all his errands. So it put a lot of pressure on me. So we felt, an assisted living would be a perfect situation. He needs the social. He won't be home alone. He'll be fed. They'll do his laundry, the cleaning. And that's not what he wanted. But we put him in there anyways. And you could just see the decline in his health.
Right.
Because that's not what he wanted.